What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Antit's Garage. It's a beautiful night here out in the Midwest. You might be able to hear the cicadas still. I thought they'd all be gone by now, but nope. We're not worried about the bugs though, because in this episode we're focused on what I'm looking at right now. This is the Patient here, 2017 Escalade. It's got about 168,000 and change miles on it, and it's got a big hole in the block. The starter's soaked. It's donezo. I pulled the, I'll try to put the clip in. I pulled the drain plug off it. It was like Niagara Falls of coolant coming out. But you can see it's all stock under here, except for minus the intake. You see we got Pascal hanging out. Pascal's pretty excited about this one. But you say, Jack, you're gonna make it fast. What are you gonna put into it? And I'll tell you what we're gonna put into it, because for a couple weeks, a mysterious crate showed up. And Bill and I were like, oh, that's gotta be the crate for the Escalade. And we thought, oh, you know, it probably just stock replacement, no big deal, just engine in, engine out like we always do. Not this time though, because I cracked open the box. I remember saying to Bill, it's a lot more shiny than it's supposed to be. We are throwing this beautiful Texas Speed LT1 into this Escalade, and you'll see, any of you keen-eyed viewers, no DOD. You're gonna have to get the bumper off. There's a couple core supports back here, condenser, radiator, all that's gonna come off because we're gonna pull this motor out through the front. So it'll be much easier that way. And then it'll just give us that much more room when we throw this thing in, once it's all dressed up and everything. We don't gotta fumble with trying to dance it around a hood or trying to, you know, get it into a tight opening. So gonna get started here. I've already got some of the fluids drained out of it. I'm gonna get the radiator drained, then I'm gonna get started on taking this beast apart. And oh, by the way, don't mind the Jeep wheels. These are not the actual wheels, but this thing's been sitting for a while because it's got a hole in the block. So not gonna let your nice wheels sit outside when the vehicle's dead. Draining the coolant on this car isn't especially difficult because all of it wound up in the block. And also, I found the hole. So if you look back in there, see if I can get it for you. Look at that. Nice little viewing hole right there. Also, you see we got our bumper off here. You'll notice we did disconnect our parking sensors. You don't actually have to do that when you pull these bumpers off. There's a big junction plug right here. However, this one has been chewed up, and one of these is shattered. This is shattered, and so a couple other things. So we're gonna do some repair on that. So we figured it'd just be easier to yank it off now. Gonna pop these headlights off, and like I said earlier in the video, we're pulling the front of the car off to pull the engine up and out this way and see where we're at after that.
We're gonna pull the core support as an assembly. No need to take the shutter system off. It bolts up to the core support, take the headlights out. There's a couple bolts down either side that you take out. Should be able to take that whole thing off as a cartridge. Everyone, just a little break from the time-lapse madness. See, we got all this stuff off and on the ground here, and one of the things Bill was helping with on this was, you know, taking the front of one of these cars off might seem a little daunting, but a lot of things are actually pretty modular. So in terms of like that radiator and that fan shroud with the electric fans and the condenser all come off as one. This whole unit here, that's one big unit. You don't got to just take everything off one at a time. You can, you know, if you look a little further and get behind it, you can take that whole unit off. So now that we're at this point, gonna go ahead and get the starter bolts out, as well as undo the exhaust down there and the bell housing bolts. And then we'll be able to come back up here, start on doing stuff like these heater lines and all these electrical connections here, and start moving things off. We're gonna try to keep as much on this motor as possible, take things off in big chunks, but keep as much off on it as we can, because now we have plenty of room.
Midnight here at Ancient's Garage. We got a lot done today. Bill and I are pretty tired, but wanted to show you our progress so far. You saw, so those last time lapses, we were mainly messing around under here. You saw we were able to get those, the Y pipe with the converters on it. That came down. Just had to drop this cross member for the trans. You saw we had the bottle jack supporting it. Also able to get those two on either side for the bell housing. We're gonna have to get the intake off to get the upper two on, and we always, when we yank these motors, we always leave the bottom two on until the very end. But you can see also, starter is out, and if I can see up there, you can see all the bolts for the torque converter are out. So next time when we come back, it'll be in a day or two, we're gonna start yanking up all the stuff off the engine, getting the heater lines, air conditioning out of the way and all that stuff, and getting everything off that we need, that we think we need to get off for pulling it out, making sure all the electrical connections are unplugged and out of the way. And then you know, we'll be pulling that intake off and everything up there, and this thing will be coming out, making room for our beautiful Texas Speed LT4 right here. And just something fun, because I was getting a little nosy. Look in this intake here, you see how gnarly this motor was. Look at all that. This thing is absolute toast. And just like that though, it's the next night, so you're not gonna have to wait for anything. So we're gonna get started here. Like I said, a bunch of stuff to take off over there. Get this intake off, make sure all the electrical is unplugged, disconnect the motor mounts, and then we just got those couple bell housing bolts on the back, and we'll be pulling this thing out hopefully tonight. Whoa. I tell you, those upper bell housing bolts on the very back, those top two, are a real doozy to get off. You can't see them. You're breathing in gasoline fumes the whole time. It's tough, but they're out. And then we just got to get those two last bell housing bolts on the bottom out. And then this thing will be coming out. Sorry if that angle was a little low on that last time lapse. I'll make sure for the, when we're putting it back in, it'll be a better angle, but that was just the best place to put it with what we were doing. And I tell you, not a sponsor or anything, but if you're working on a truck, something tall, these topside creepers, man, are fantastic. You can just get right up on top of it, which is really nice. So we're gonna go ahead and get this last motor mount off, get those bell housing bolts off, yank this thing out of there.
Towards you. Knew you forgot something. Right hither. It's got your great clip on it too. We have almost bird the motor.
That's the quickest I've ever gotten.
You're under pressure. In the meantime, while we're waiting for Jack to take a bolt out, remember, he grabs the smallest socket, the smallest ratchet for the small guy in the shop.
This is a 3/8 ratchet. I've got a smaller one.
Did you grab the shortest socket you had?
I don't know how much room.
Like I said,
This is not necessary. A deep well is not
he
necessary.
grabs small sockets, everything he does.
A deep well is not necessary for this bolt here.
No, but we have electric tools and we have air operated tools, but yet he chooses to use the manual tools.
Hand tools make me feel like I'm actually doing something. Okay. Now, there's nothing else.
And we walked into the shop today. Corvette Bill was already here. It looks like he's getting some work done on our dead unit here. Bill, what have we taken off so far?
Yeah, I got a little overzealous. Got here a little early. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to get to it. So I started ripping it down. Got the motor mounts off. Got the flywheel off. Got the rear main cover off. Got the front tore down. All we got to do is take the harmonic balancer off. We can finally get the timing cover off, the water crossover, and the bracket off. Got the one fuel injector rail out of it. So knock sensors are off, crank sensors already taken off, swapped over. Just getting the peripherals done, get them put on the new motor. We just got to drop half the oil pan bolts are out, so we just got to drop the other half of the oil pan bolts, double check, make sure everything's in there before we put the new oil pan on, because obviously there's a lot of metal in this motor from it letting loose. But other than that, you know, it's just a couple of things that we've got left, but we got to get it down on the ground in order to finish the rest of it. And with a hole in the side of the block, we got to lock up the crank in the back to get the harmonic balancer bolt off, because my impact is like, no, I don't want to do that.
Now that, my friends, is what you call total annihilation right there. I wasn't sure what we were going to be expecting here when I pulled this pan off, but it's yeah. So this thing definitely went through it. And you know what the funniest thing was? Talking to the owner of this car, he was just like pulling out of the gas station, like slowly pulling away, and next thing you know, boom, dead. Trials and tribulations of getting this crank pulley here off. You see here we broke 2 of these impact extensions, Harbor Freight though, so you know, I mean, to be expected. But also here trying to get some leverage on this thing. I don't know if it picked it up in the time lapse when I was standing on top of this. We had to put Bill on the other side, but you can see it took a lot. These are, Bill was saying, 233 pound-feet on these.
233 foot-pounds of torque is what goes on the harmonic balancer bolt to hold it in place, lock it down. That's what GM specs are for when you put the motor together. Unfortunately, Jack didn't have enough rocks in his pockets, and if you see it in the time lapse, you see Jack like jumping up and down. That's not Jack jumping up and down. That was me with the extension trying to break that bolt.
Picking me up with the block, basically.
And he was standing on top of the block. Unfortunately, we had to put the big guy, you know, everybody says, oh, being heavy's bad. Not in this case. Once again, big guy held the motor down so we could break it loose.
So starting to go back the other way with it now on our new motor here. You can see the first step in the process is our DOD delete here. So we're plugging up these oil ports here. That way when we put that cover on, won't be able to actuate anything because there won't be any oil flowing through here. So you can see we got everything pretty much put together here, ready to go in. We got our headers on it, we got our flex plate. Went to take a look. Now I showed you this intake in the beginning and we were thinking about cleaning it, but we're gonna request a new one from the owner of this car because, you know, you can clean this, you can wash it out, but think about it, like look at all these little pieces. God forbid a motor like that, if you miss one little piece and that gets sucked in there, don't like it. So we're gonna get a new throttle body, get a new intake. So, trying to get this in here. It's a little unfortunate. I was all excited about these coil covers. Not gonna work. You see, we've got it. It's not sitting right, and it will not sit right with those covers on. You see, we removed it off that side. Tried to put it in with the headers in also. That didn't work. You see those heater lines back there. Not gonna be able to put that cover on. So I think for the time being, we're gonna have to run these with no cover, unfortunately.
Or put the factory ones.
Or put the factory, yeah, I don't know. So we gotta hook this thing back up, yank it out, pull that out, try it again. We've got it all situated now though. You can see just kind of how tight it is back there. These are brand new. These are like just came out, this design. They're definitely not for a truck, they are for a car. So we're gonna have to figure out that coil back there, if we're gonna be able to plug that in or not. We'll make it work. So gonna start reassembly here. Honestly, with the headers off, it makes it a lot easier to get those motor mounts in, especially that back one right there. But we had an issue because it wasn't clearing between the firewall and that front drive shaft there. Just was not gonna work. But honestly, I'd almost rather just put the header on later and deal with this. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these motor mount bolts in. Then I'm gonna go ahead and get the bell housing bolts all the way around and the torque converter, and we'll reconvene once I got all that done.
By the way, I did want to mention we got a little bit more information back on what this motor actually is. We finally got a build sheet for it. It's not an LT4, it's an LT1, so I can stop correcting myself on the screen now. And it is a 6.2, but it's been bored out to a 416 cubic inch, which is a little more like 6.8 liters. So really excited to see this thing on the dyno and see what it puts down.
So as you saw in those last time lapses, all our bell housing bolts are good, our torque converter bolts are good, headers are in, motor mounts are on, but we have one problem, which we're gonna come back to later. But adding to the list of car things that are now in an SUV slash truck, this steering shaft's not gonna work. So we're gonna go ahead, most likely just gonna have to heat this up, bend it a little bit. And if you've watched Engine Masters, you know this is not gonna do a single thing to hurt performance. We could hit the crap out of these things and it'll be fine. Just a little bend in there so this clears will be just fine.
Now that all that's done though, we'll come back to that exhaust and that steering shaft. We got a brand new ported intake manifold and throttle body, so we're gonna go ahead and get that all installed and torque this back.
So now that we got the intake all put back together, we're ready to tackle this clearance issue we have here. We've got it. This is how we're gonna do it. You see we got that wood down there. Bill's gonna heat this pipe up with a torch. I'm gonna go ahead and stick this socket and extension in there, and then he's gonna pry against that with a crowbar, and we should be able to get we only need like a 1/4 inch more clearance, so should be pretty simple. Well, the blowtorch wasn't getting it hot enough, so we had to dig our acetylene torch out. That should definitely do the job now. Just like that, you'll have to forgive us. We couldn't really film it because all of our hands were in use, but you see we got a nice little dimple in there, so we have plenty of room for this shaft. And we also threw some high temperature ceramic coating on it just out of a can, up to 2,000 degrees. It's good for, just to help keep this coupler here happy. Shouldn't have any issues with it heating up or anything like that. But so now we have plenty of room. This steering shaft is back on.
But now that we got our exhaust modification out of the way, you see that shaft's all free and clear. We got a lot of stuff to start plugging in. So I'm gonna let the camera roll and just start getting everything plugged in where it's gotta be. Once that's done, like once I have this in place here and everything, the wiring harness there, I'll be able to start putting the alternator on and getting everything hooked up to that and start putting the front of this car back on. This car is an absolute mess under there. But that's fine because everything is plugged in underneath. Our knock sensors, our starter motor is hooked up, which frees me up. Now I can start making sure that our harness up here is all in where it's supposed to be. I can secure all this down up here, get our fuel supply hooked up, and then we'll start hooking up the rest of the front of this motor here.
Neat little trick from the Arsenal Corvette Billy. You see these little spacers right here that are in this bracket for the alternator. Before you put your alternator in, it's good practice from the back with a little like ball peen hammer or something. Hit them out a little bit so that way this alternator will drop in nicely, and that way when you tighten it up, it'll take up the slack and then it'll be holding it the way it's supposed to. So sometimes if you don't do that, sometimes it can be a real mess. And if you ever pulled one of these, you'll know that sometimes you really got to pry on them to get them out. So that hitting those little spacers out will take care of that problem for when you go and put it back in. Gonna go ahead and get everything hooked up here. Probably gonna try to get our plug wires in. That last one back there is gonna be a little fun, but I'll get it figured out. And then we've got to get a couple gaskets for our AC lines here. Just one. That one was missing, or broken rather. So we're gonna have to fix that. And then once we got all that out of the way, one thing we are gonna have to do, you can see here for this belt here, this one is nice and tight, but this one is quite loose, and that is a problem. So we're gonna have to try to alleviate that, but that's no big deal. Pretty much almost done with putting everything back on here. It's going together quite nicely. Really excited to get this thing fired up.
You're gonna have to like reach over it. Yeah, go ahead, pull. Pull. A little more. All right.
Just wanted to give you a little visual here. Remember I was saying earlier about that number 8 cylinder coil pack. Well, you can see we humored those heater lines a little bit, so now it is plugged in properly. There's no kinks, or it's not stressed at all. The heat shield's where it's supposed to be, protecting it from the header, and we're good to go back there now.
So at this point, we're ready to go back in with the radiator here on this Escalade, but one of the things we noticed when we were pulling it all off is just the amount of cottonwood and stuff that's in this radiator. With this new engine that we're putting in, we have to make sure we have as much cooling as possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and blow all this out of here before we put that back in. Took a break after that last clip, came back. It's a new day. I got a little laundry list of stuff written out here that I got to take care of. It's a bunch of small little things. I'm just going to let the camera roll, do a time lapse for you all. I hope you enjoy. But what I'm going to be doing, if I can see my list here, some AC lines, condenser lines, that stretch belt that I was telling you about earlier, got to replace that. Trans lines need to be hooked up to the radiator. Install heater hoses, coolant lines, new clamps, headlights, airbox, a couple radiator bolts. You'll notice we took this top support off. Had to redo 3 of the rib nuts in it, so that'll be secured now. And then the last thing we got to do is this engine blew up with 30 gallons of fresh gasoline in it about 8 months ago. So we can't keep that in there anymore. So that's going to have to come out as well.
So we got everything buttoned up pretty well under the hood here. Now we're just trying to get this fuel out of here. Originally tried to tap into the fuel pump relay up there. That wasn't working though. And then we tried to siphon it out of the tank. That didn't work either. So I disconnected the signal wire from the starter. And now I just got to keep hitting this button. Let's see if you see it down there. We just got it drained into our bucket. And there's 30 gallons in this car. So we're going to be here for a little while.
Now, if you remember, as I said at the beginning of the video, these are not the wheels we're leaving on this car. They were just for transport purposes only. But since we've got things pretty much buttoned up under the hood and we've got our fuel all drained out, it's time to get rid of these and say hello to these. These are some pretty nice Method off-road wheels, and one of my favorites, these Falcon Wild Peak tires. I have these on my truck and they're excellent. These are much more fitting for this car.
All right, we've already primed the engine, trying to drain the fuel out of this thing. So this is going to be the first crank to see what we got. Wow, that is wake up the neighbors loud.
With that startup, ladies and gentlemen, we are pretty much done here. I don't know about you, but if there was a definition for how a sleeper should look, I think this is about it. You can barely tell what's under the hood of this Escalade, short from looking at these headers and taking a peek at those cylinder heads. But, you know, running a little rough right now, but that's just because it hasn't been tuned yet and everything's got to relearn itself. But we should be all good here. Now the only thing left to do is wait for this thing to go on the dyno and see what it puts down.
Well, everybody, we finally got our dyno numbers. Got a chance to get the Cadillac Escalade over to dyno. Got our numbers back. We got 422 horsepower, 467 torque to the wheels. Now, on a two-wheel drive car, you'd think, yeah, it's okay. No, what you need to realize is this baby is all-wheel drive. So you got 422 at each wheel. It's a big vehicle, pulls like a freight train. You'd be a world of surprise. And to pull up next to this at a stoplight, you'd be like, that's nothing. You get left in the dust and you'd be like, what the?
That is it. That is a LT1 Texas Speed swap on an Escalade. If you are looking to do that yourself, well, now maybe you have some idea of what you got to do. So super exciting. As always, guys, we are almost at 500 subscribers. So thank you to every one of you that has been tuning in, watching, liking, commenting, subscribing to the channel. I promise you we have so much more coming, and I'm looking at the next car that's going to be the next video, which is just about to come in here. That one's going to be really cool. You won't want to miss that, especially because, Bill, it's a personal vehicle, right?
Yeah, it's a personal vehicle. We won't let that cat out of the bag yet, but that one's going to be pretty interesting to do. It's something a little along the lines of something we haven't done before, so it'll be interesting.
And it's a Ford, I'll tell you that much. It's a Ford, so Bill's hands might burn a little bit when he touches it or just by looking at it, but I think he'll be just fine. But guys, as always, our social medias are in the description. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook and hit that subscribe button while you're there. Please leave us a like, leave us a comment, tell us what you liked, tell us what you didn't like.
Give us your feedback. We definitely want to hear from you. If you like the videos, let us know that you like them. If you don't like the shirt one of us are wearing, put it in the comments. Just interact with us. We like that.
Speaking of shirt, though, available to you soon. Bill, give us a twirl. Haha! This is our new t-shirt. So once we're able to put these on the site for you to buy, they will be available for you. They're super cool. And this Corvette right here is actually, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's right there. So super exciting, guys. We are growing. It's amazing. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time.